In the interest of the American League Division Series, and
So at least we know what
make
the
it a good state
we have right
anyway.
here.
So,
Yeah.
Red Sox at 8 o'clock. With Cleveland.
Yeah.
And actually, it was a good game between.
There's no national in Massachusetts.
Sorry.
San Francisco.
It's American League.
All right. So,
We have
we'll start off, we'll hear from our OPM, Alan Minkus.
What is that?
in the Bay Area.
Oh, welcome back.
Thank you. We had our we had our 90% construction estimate done and reconciliation. I was not here for it. Tim sat in on it with the architect and the estimators. So if there are any details, we can get into that. But the bottom line that came out was at the estimate was that we previously were about $30,000 under our construction budget, and we narrowed that gap, unfortunately, down to we are under by $4,300 with what they saw in the 90% construction documents. So we're still under budget, but not as much under budget as we were previously. The one thing that has, at the request of, I believe the architects put this in, was some deduct alternates. And we came up with, and we told you about the deleting the air conditioning in the existing building. We've been carrying that all along, and that's still in there as a deduct alternate, but they added 3 more, so that potentially we have a savings here of an additional $565,000 if need be when the bids come in. So it's a safety net, if you will.
What are they?
Well, I'm going to get to that. We need to list these in which you take first, second, third, and fourth. And so because they're deduct alternates, we're going to take it's not like it's not like an add alternate where it's something you want to have. It's a deduct alternate. So the first one you take is this thing you want least. They had the number 1 deduct alternate, double glazing in lieu of triple glazing glass on the windows. I talked to them about that. I think that if a rock goes through a window, you're going to have a hard time finding triple glazing than double glazing. So I think that's something that's I wouldn't do it anyway, personally, but that's a choice we can make. Out in front of the school, we have concrete outside the doors. They're putting asphalt sidewalks in lieu of the concrete there. Again, I think the concrete's a no-brainer. You don't want to have asphalt in some of these areas. So you just really want to have a good, hard, durable surface that's going to last the life of the building and not get chewed up over time. And that would have been the second deduct alternate. The third deduct alternate would be eliminating the electronic sign that we talked about at our previous meetings out in front. That was a request to have some sort of announcement board there. And then the fourth deduct alternate was the deletion of the air conditioning in the existing building. So all those 3 together, the triple glazing to double glazing was $113,000. The asphalt sidewalks in lieu of concrete was $112,000. These are rough numbers. Eliminating electronic sign was $10,000, and the deleting the air conditioning was $328,000 or so. So those are things that will be carried in the bid documents as deduct alternates. So, like I said, as a safety net in case we need them. And is everybody good with the priorities that we put on those? Seem to make the most sense.
Can you refresh my memory? Is it, are we looking at air conditioning of both buildings or just?
We are air conditioning both buildings for the project. What we're saying is with this deduct alternate, we're only going to air condition the new addition.
All right.
And that the existing building would not be air conditioned. But the budget number here that we're seeing right now from the estimates of 90% has it all included. So you get all that right now if these bids come in where the estimators say they should come in, which is good.
So currently, all these pieces are in, but there is a likelihood that they may not be if the bids come higher.
If bids come in high by, say, $500,000, we may have to take all 4 of those deduct alternates to get ourselves within the budget that's been approved by the voters.
Okay.
Okay. Don't expect it,
So
but
can I just back up and talk a little bit about the alternates a little bit and how we came up with them? So we thought that we might be a little bit under, we were last time. And so we thought about some things that we've cut that we'd like to put back in if possible. This was largely an exercise to get the cost from the estimators. That if this estimate came in that we were over budget, maybe we would lose some of these already. But it seemed like a good idea to have a safety valve on whatever happens with the bidding climate. So the double to triple pane windows, that's for our wood windows only. So we have wood windows in all of the classrooms. We have metal windows in some of our corridors. So going from the double to the triple pane is really, you know, if we get a Pella window or if we get a Marvin window, that's then going from a double to a triple pane. So we got some initial pricing from Pella. The only reason why we thought about this, we got some initial pricing from Pella back at the 60% CD phase. And it wasn't as big of a jump from double to triple pane as we had thought. We are trying to insulate this building to the best of our abilities. We have 3 inches of insulation on the masonry walls. We have 4 inches under the slab. We have about 7 inches or 7, depending on, up to 9 inches, depending on the tapered insulation up on the roof. So it just would help with that building envelope. But we realize that it's a reach, and to Alan's point, maybe it has some future implications in terms of replacing windows. So it's kind of we'd like to have it, but it's certainly not necessary to the project. The paving that was happening in front of the school, when we cut the site budget so drastically at schematic design, we had always been planning on asphalt paved sidewalks up until last week. So the 60% CD estimate, that was all anticipating asphalt everywhere. And so it seemed to us with this nice front entry, to Alan's point, that it can hopefully withstand more use, that it sure would be nice to go to concrete in those areas. So that one's, you know, we could move up or down depending on how much you want to value that item. The third one is a very small item, and really, I don't know if it needs to be a deduct alternate. One of the reasons why we have it on there is we haven't met with the planning board yet. So we wanted to at least tell them that, you know, this is definitely a piece that can be pulled out of the project or left in. Rachel will go over it tonight, but it's a pretty, you know, it's not large and flashy and billboard sized. It's pretty discreet, but it does allow for an LED sign out closer to the road. And then the fourth one is the one we've been talking about all along, which is the air conditioning.
Question for you. At the planning board meeting, I believe they talked about requiring us to put in a sidewalk along the front of the property. Has that been included in these 90% designed?
I think we can speak to that. No, there's no requirement per se. So the meeting we had in August was preliminary. And there was conversation about extent of sidewalk, for sure. But there's no requirement at this point.
Okay.
And so when we go back to them next week, we will present to them our best understanding in conversations. Actually, Rachel and I today met with peer reviewer Larry Smith, PVPC, Al Wishart, and one of the lieutenants from the fire department, and walked through sidewalks. So
Okay.
I think,
Well, they're known to have sidewalks to nowhere, so,
yeah, okay,
so
okay,
just so you know.
yep.
Isn't it easy to ask the town to change the bylaws, or write a special bylaw, special?
That's a planning board bylaw, that's the problem.
Yeah, but isn't it the town the ones who propose and do those?
Has to come from the planning board. Planning board has to propose it to bring forward.
Citizens can propose changes? Like,
They can ask, but it has to be the planning board who brings it forward as the elected board. Yeah.
Where was the sidewalk to be? Where are they?
They want to have us put a sidewalk in the front of the
Is that-
property.
is that,
To the road?
Along,
go where?
along, between Maximilian and
All
Deerbrook.
the way in front of the
I think it was
high school and
Deerbrook,
everything?
yes, I think it was Deerbrook
divided
too.
discussion.
Right.
So we heard from both sides within the planning board. It seemed like there was not a consensus around that. And we had some discussions today, which kind of shifts the perspective also.
Does it say in the bylaws of the town that only the planning board?
I'd have to take a look, John, I don't remember.
Say it again?
It seems,
And
hmm?
you say what?
John wants to have proposed, see if a citizen could propose changing the bylaw regarding sidewalks.
Well, the planning board basically is the owner or the holder of the bylaws, the zoning bylaws.
Right.
So it has to go through them and they have to propose to the
But-
town meeting.
But isn't that power given
The
them
changes.
isn't that power given them by the town bylaws? Or can't a town bylaw be written?
Can
that
somebody
decides who the
propose?
power is?
I don't know that.
I think we're getting a little ahead of
Yeah.
ourselves. You know, if they decide that they want to mandate, what would that be, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sidewalk?
Probably,
Yeah.
I don't know, probably, and also not in the scope of this project.
Yeah, if that, I mean,
So-
then we'll have, I don't know, I mean,
And I would just keep that in mind as an alternative to think about if we're expected to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on another sidewalk to nowhere.
I'm not 100% sure that there's actually a requirement anywhere in the bylaws that talks about the sidewalks. As I remember, this goes back to the master plan where there was a chapter that was talking about making the schools more accessible by bike, by, walking and all that. And I think the intent was, which was, similar to what happened around CVS, whenever there is a project, to propose having a sidewalk and piece by piece to be able to connect these things, because it is costly. If we tell them that, hey, this is actually to the detriment of the project because it's gonna cost a lot of money, my guess is they probably will understand what that means. And in fact, if it's sidewalk to nowhere, it's not gonna be connected anytime soon. 202 is a state road, and at the end, if we want sidewalk along the entire corridor, it's gonna have to be a state decision. The state will have to do that.
Under that, we heard today from Larry, he seemed to have a sense that there may be a plan for complete streets along 202, which would be inclusive of a bike lane, inclusive of a sidewalk, and it would not be on our property.
Right. So there is actually a good likelihood that this conversation probably is gonna be a, positive conversation.
I would expect so.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think we have an alternative in
Right.
the worst case scenario.
Yep.
There's also a presumption that if you have a sidewalk along there, you have to maintain it when it snows, that you can't just let it go just because you don't, yeah, so, and that's a long stretch that you have to plow, snow blow.
Mhm.
Well, any thoughts on the list of deduct alternates? You can return to this, but it would be great to have some thoughts
Just,
tonight. The only one that I was thinking of was maybe switching 2 and 3 and having the electronic sign be tossed out earlier than the concrete sidewalks in front of the building.
so if it's alternate one,
you have to take them
that
in
goes
order.
out first.
Right.
Okay.
So if the budget, the bids come in $100,000 over, you can either decide to keep it, we want the project just how we want it, we're willing to spend extra money, we're done, or you can decide, maybe those triple pane windows aren't so important to us. But you can't pick number 3 before you pick numbers 1 and 2.
At what point would you hear from who is it, what board?
The planning board.
Planning
On the
board,
sign.
whether on the sign, because, let's face it, if you're over budget, $10,000
It's
is
nothing.
not gonna
It's
make or break the project, you have a contingency fund, so I would eliminate that if.
Because you complicate the bidding just by having it on the bid form.
Yeah,
And-
it's
and-
something to keep in mind as a group, but I wouldn't include it as a deduct alternate. I think you want to include the other one where it's a significant dollar value, which would have an impact on your bidding. But a little thing like that, I would just, either you're going to put it in or you're going to put it out, and you can, as long as we're here before we go out to bid. that's-
Say you have a good GC, but he forgets to fill in one number on that thing.
Right.
Then he's done. And so you've complicated the fact that you may have lost a good GC on an error like that.
Another thing is with that, it's like a really good donation, one really good donation pays for that.
Planning board on the 11th, is that right?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. So we'll let you know.
We still have time to digest these?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it can go out the way it is, and we just send an addendum out that excludes it, you know, during the bidding process.
No, we have a month to digest these and come back and talk about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget in general? Does that make sense to folks where we are?
It's trivial, but I think we're on the positive side by 30-some thousand dollars last time, is that correct?
Last time it was about 30, now we're on the positive side by about $4,000.
What changed roughly to put us down to 4,000?
Of that, I can't explain, because I wasn't at the
So we've
reconciliation.
added triple pane windows, we've added concrete in front of the building, we've added an LED sign out front, and then we've also done a lot of other, you know, subtle changes to the design details. We've added more tack surface, because we realized that behind the tack boards in East Meadow, we were gonna take them all down, and there's gonna be nice exposed glazed brick. Well, it turns out that behind those tack boards is unpainted cinder block.
You knew that all along, huh?
Any other secrets you want to let us know?
Boy, they were very,
So we have a little bit more tack
Portion
board
windows.
on our interior elevations than we had previously. So there were a lot of small changes like that. So all of those numbers went up, but then our contingencies went down.
Our design
So our
contingency.
design contingencies went down. So you can see that, you know, on total markups, Collier's on their reconciled numbers at that $4.1 million numbers takes the most conservative approach out of both estimators. So that's why that number is higher than both of the two estimators. So I think we're still proceeding in a conservative manner, but in general, those pricing contingencies have come down and we've increased some of the construction costs.
And that's good to know, and I'm glad that, you know, you provided the details, because looks like we were able to add whatever we considered alternatives in the contract, yet we are still $4,000 under budget, so it's a pretty good story.
It's a great
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a sigh of relief on that. All right. Hand over to Rachel, talk about site.
Cited and play.
Just gonna update you guys with where we are at and get your feedback before we make this final push. Talking about phasing, paving, curbing, a little bit on the entry sign, play areas, and a little bit about the. So we met with the department heads and we met with DPW and we got a lot of feedback about pavement and curb type and snow removal. We're also keeping an eye on the longevity and durability. And what results is a lot of different types of curbing. Additionally, Mass DOT owns anything south of that dashed red line at the bottom of the page. So any of your drives or curbs or sidewalks south of that line belongs to Mass DOT and they have jurisdiction over it. So they require that we either use bituminous curbing or we use granite curbing in that area. And then whenever we have the concrete sidewalks, we want to have a durable material adjacent to it. So we're using an integral concrete curb. So the contractor pours the slab for the concrete and the curb at the same time, so they're locked in together. And then we transition where we can to bituminous Cape Cod burn, because DPW said that's the easiest for them to plow against. If you have to have it burn, we'd love to be able to plow over that. It's also really easy to replace if it becomes damaged. And then a third option is just no curb. On site today, there are lots of places that do not have curbs. It's great for sheet flow, draining off the pavements, and then also the DPW is really interested in being able to pile up snow anywhere along the river they need to, so it gives you flexibility. So in this diagram, you know, the north of the parking lot where we're next to the ball fields, we have bituminous curbing. Then where we have an asphalt sidewalk to the west, you have precast curbing up against the asphalt. Also, so there's a slight difference, visual difference between the sidewalk and the paving. And then the green again is the no curb, and, interval curb is the darker blue adjacent to the sidewalks. Any comments or questions on this?
Can you explain what alternate number one has to do with what you just talked about up there?
Yeah, so in terms of the alternates, so the base bid, we own cast in place concrete sidewalks.
The pointer doesn't work, so
Okay.
yeah.
This is the new addition. This is the existing building, and this hatch pattern, these are all cast in place concrete sidewalks along the entries. And with the interval curb, so that's what we own in our base bid. If we pursue the deduct alternate to reduce that down to asphalt, we would then carry precast concrete curb with asphalt sidewalk.
Everywhere? Even that strip across the front of the building would be up the top?
Yeah.
That would be, is it really a good idea to do that? I mean, asphalt and doesn't get along that well with the
We
world.
would prefer to not do that.
Well, is there any ways we can compromise this alternate so we get some concrete in more appropriate areas for design sake? I mean, it's gonna look pretty ugly out there with big old a sea of black asphalt. You got a nice building, nice trees, and all of a sudden we got a sea of asphalt, or at least the front of the building should have a piece of concrete.
We could reduce the, how do I say this? Reduce the scope of the asphalt, so your deduct alternate would not be as great of a number. But we could, for instance, have all of the sidewalk to the west of the building as asphalt.
Yeah, I don't mind that, I'm just concerned the front of the building is appropriate.
Keep all of the sidewalk to the south of the building as concrete, and that number might go down to an $80,000 savings instead of $100,000 savings, but maybe that's a better.
I would think it should be looked at.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
All the way at the bottom of the screen, is it all red? Doesn't mean it's all granite curbing?
So we have the granite curbing on this portion.
Just there?
Yeah, and then this is the bituminous here, and then this is no curb.
Do you want to talk about sidewalks while on this line, Rachel?
Sure, yeah. So when we submitted to site plan, we initially had the sidewalk coming from the bus drop-off area extending all the way to Route 202. And then we also had the sidewalk, which we still have, extending all the way to 202 and connecting to Maximilian. Couple things, Mass DOT, again, as I said, they have material reign over what happens in this zone, so they really care about what the materials are within their right of way. And then we heard feedback from the planning board about, does it make sense to have a pedestrian connection all the way to nowhere? And looked at that. Our sense was that, based upon the comments we heard, that we should maybe pull back the sidewalk from 202 with this connection, just start the sidewalk where the bus drop-off begins, and still provide an asphalt sidewalk to connect to the Maximilian Drive, because the Maximilian Drive sidewalk comes so close already, so we can connect to it. And then we heard some feedback today. There's a suggestion about perhaps this little spur that we're adding on to connect to Maximilian, pulling this into our property outside of Mass DOT's areas to get students away from that corner, away from that intersection, because they don't have a need to be there, per se. And then also with if a Mass DOT complete street plan is being implemented, that changes the discussion dramatically in terms of us needing to provide more sidewalks or not.
There's a sidewalk out back too that goes to Maximilian,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Is
and
that-
we're
that's
preserving
the
that
entrance or
connection.
anything, but-
Or preserving that connection.
How are we doing with the curb cut with Mass DOT?
They were happy with what we've prepared. There was a question, the last question was about, they have this rule that you can only have 2 points of access onto the 202 from your property. But because our site is actually 2 properties, we have the senior high school property, and we have the East Meadow property. The senior high school connection, which is here, is on their property, and then we meet the requirements for the 2 you wanted to, you could add a fourth, but. I don't think we should, yeah.
Okay, no, it's, so it looks like they're probably gonna grant us
Yeah,
that
so
curb cut?
we submitted the documentation to them and,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And then the sign. So we started looking at what's on site today. So in front of the junior, senior high school, we have a granite and brick sign. There's a marquee out in front of it, not pictured here. Can't forget the dinosaur. The dinosaur is also a good symbol of the school. And then there's an existing East Meadow sign about in the same line out front of East Meadow. So our new sign, we're proposing to replace the existing one. Okay. Okay. And then we heard that there's a desire to perhaps include illuminated display that could maybe be changed once a day for school messaging, and in emergency cases also, if there was a need to get the message out in an emergency, this could be a place that could happen. We floated this idea to the planning board, and you didn't hear positive and negative one way, but it seemed like they were open to the idea of discussing and looking at it further, especially if the message was not a flashing message, but was something that could be changed once or twice a day.
Is this gonna be exclusively used for the elementary school, or is the high school gonna get a chance to put notices up there?
All right, on this one?
We haven't had that discussion, but we would have it at the admin team. My opinion would be that it could be used for all school events.
So the location then is not necessarily representative of that. So if you go back one slide, looks like where the dinosaur is right
Yeah.
now is probably the best spot for that.
That's not where we have it now, but
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We-
We had the same debate about that.
Yeah.
do we have the?
Currently, it is here, but the dinosaur is here, and the school, high school, Emerson High School signs there.
Right. So we were thinking that we could put it beyond, to the west of the second entry was one option. That might make the most sense if it's being shared with both schools.
But it's gonna get red, you know, as you're going into the driveway, so, you know, depending on where it is, you may or may not see it. You might see it from 202,
Right.
but if you're driving into the driveways and if it's too far away,
Right. If you're coming from the west and turning in the first towards the high school,
you'll see it.
barely.
And if you're going into the elementary school, you may not see it, depending on where it's located.
The other factor we were considering is that if you were coming from the east and looking for East Meadow School, and it was here, it might force you into that entrance, which we want parents and visitors to be fed into this entrance, or was currently.
Right. It's primarily going to say East Meadow School.
Just a side question, because someone's asked me, what is this gonna be called? Is that the decision you made? Is this gonna be East Meadow School, is this gonna be something new?
So the decision
It's a
hasn't been made.
sidebar,
Certainly, it hasn't been made yet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done from the administrative side, building a culture of one school, naming the school, you know, bringing two student bodies together, bringing two staff bodies together. So that would definitely be part of that discussion. Bringing the community into
Before the
that.
sign gets made.
I think we have a little time.
I think the sign really should just be for Granby Elementary because there's such a difference in community between K and 6 and 7 and 12. And there's so many things to announce. I mean, I don't think sharing a sign is really doable. There's so many different activities going on all the time. There's two different communities. Just my opinion that the elementary school should have its own sign. There's so many activities that don't include the high school and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think it's a discussion, within the community, it's a campus now. It's the Granby Public Schools. It's one campus. Does that have a different feel? Does that look different? Does it feel different? And I think that's an important question to ask.
And I think people might also ask, can we use it for town events?
Yeah,
Vote today,
yeah.
town meeting tonight,
Yeah.
people always complain they don't know these things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
If that's
Yeah.
gonna be the sign in town that rotates, that
It certainly came up today with police and fire, that if there were an emergency, that the sign could be used to communicate important messages.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the 2-bedroom rentals.
That's what it will say.
It's got some serious revenue potential there.
It'll say that 50% of the time there. We started looking at precedents of how other places are using and incorporating digital signage into their traditional signage.
The reason why we pulled that one out is because it was one of the more kind of discrete uses of the.
So don't look at the content, look at like the shape, the proportion of what's a hard
Nor the shape
sign.
of the thing on top of it.
Right, but the proportion maybe of a name to be named, and then a digital message that can be modified. And so we're starting to develop the design of the sign, and we looked at the existing senior high school sign. Once we removed all the words and just looked at the massing, where the brick is, where the granite is, and then how we could then translate that into a digital sign package. So this first iteration here is, again, brick with just a large digital sign infill, or maybe having a gap underneath it, or having a combination of the granite piece at the top, the school name, and then the digital sign underneath it. And then the columns of the brick came, again, to try and tie into the existing sign at the high school, so it kind of seems like one campus.
I think option 2 would be the hardest to maintain.
Okay.
The cutting grass, weed whacking.
That's a good point, yeah. We also talked to a couple different sign manufacturers, and we were hoping for smaller, like a 19-inch high display, 17 inches, and they recommend 29 inches the minimum if you want legibility from the road. So they're pretty vocal for that.
And, going back to the announcements, we're going to have to learn to be selective anyway, because as you're driving, even if we have 10 announcements, people are going to see one. So what is that top announcements? Whether it's an emergency or a town meeting or an event at school, we're going to have to pick a few, and that's it.
It may be actually a condition of the planning board too, in terms of how many times we can change the message. So worried about distractions. And I will also say that today we did learn that it's likely that if we all agree to pursue an electronic message sign, that it will probably have to be a special permit. So we could probably separate this off, but we want to get our site plan review done. But this would be a separate permit.
So it'll go to ZBA and,
No, special permit will be
Okay.
done by the planning board.
all right.
There are precedents, and they did, again, when we had an initial meeting with them, they recognized the existence of precedents in town, and certainly some important other uses from a safety standpoint, and public information standpoint, so I didn't get the sense that they were against it, let's put it that way, but we would have to go through the whole process.
Talking about play?
Chris wants to, right? Just.
Yep, you're right.
So we met with the teachers, was it a week?
Oh gosh, no, a month ago.
It's been one of those months. Yeah, we met with the teachers a month ago to talk about the play development of areas, and we got some good feedback that we wanted to talk with you about tonight and get your input on as well. And so this is a modification of that presentation. One of the biggest pieces that came out of it in terms of impact on the design and how we think about the design is that there was a desire to maybe separate out a third play area. So currently we have a play area for pre-K through second grade to the east of the school, and then we have a separate area for third through sixth to the north of the school. And we heard that due to some of the challenges of some of the students at the pre-K level, that it may be benefit to the project to break out a separate area that's pre-K and kindergarten or pre-K from the rest of the school. So that's a question, that's something to get your input on, because that carries a cost number with it. It's more fencing, more play equipment, more circuit. We also like to keep an eye on and making sure that we are doing our best to serve the development of the students at schools with the types of play equipment and types of play activity that are supported on site. There are 5 categories of play that we seek to knock off the list as we think about these designs. So active features like climbing, running, and swinging, those are really great. Anything that activates the child's inner ear really helps them have attention during the classroom outside of the playground. So it helps inside the what's happening outside the classroom helps them inside the classroom. Having areas for creative play, building moldable materials, dirt, sand, places for them to begin to work together in groups and teams, and then opportunities for differences in texture and sound, and places for them to chill out and be quiet, even if there's a lot of chaos going on around them. So currently in the northern playground, the 3rd through 6th, we have 2 swing areas, a climbing net, a stage, and an embankment slide. And then we are using a landform area. So at the school level, we're at elevation 0. The top of this landform is 6 feet, but it provides accessibility to all the play features without use of handrails or guardrails. So all of the play features are universally accessible. And then the side slopes also provide more places for climbing and different types of activities. So this is a rough sketch of what that might look like. A view from the school looking out, the rise of the landform to the top, the 2 swing areas, the net climbers, the stage area, and then the hard surface basketball courts on the inside. The pre-K through second grade playground, again, we have 2 swing sets, an embankment slide, some more landforms, and then paving pattern that acts as a maze, so children can run or ride tricycles in infinite loops, as long as you let them. There are also areas for a gravel pit area and a big sandbox for digging into those areas. So this is a rough sketch of what that might look like, looking from the school towards the north, the swing sets, and the landforms of those play features.
What does this require as far as maintenance?
So you would, well, if you decide to plow or snow remove, you would plow and snow remove the paths. The paths are 8 feet wide or 5 feet wide, depending where they are in the maze. We have lawn areas, and then the mulch, the ADA wood mulch, the fall surfacing underneath the swings and underneath the slide would need to be checked every year, and you might have to add some more top dress, some more wood mulch to make sure you're meeting the fall height requirements.
So nothing very frequent, like at the end of every day somebody has to go to do something?
No.
Okay.
It's really simple.
But
simple
it will have to be watered on a regular basis.
We do not currently have irrigation.
Right, someone's got to walk out with a hose.
Well, do you irrigate your lawn areas now?
No.
Okay. So.
We have a good rain dance, but other than
Yeah.
that,
Not working so well lately.
yeah.
It will take longer till snow blow goes.
Yeah.
Probably want the kids to go out sometimes in winter, some limited, but you do want them to go out, so.
And currently now, I believe let me back up to the other one. Currently now, this is almost the exact footprint of what you have now in terms of hard surface play outside of East Meadow. And we heard that in some winters, when it's a really intense winter, like this winter might be, that this area will be cleared, and that's where students will go out and play during the winter. So, again, it's a choice up to the school how much they want to clear or manage. So another comment we heard from teachers is that for 3rd through 6th, there's one teacher outside during recess time observing the whole site, and there was concern about visibility, being able to sit or stand in one point and see all the children outside. So looking back at the plans, realized that maybe it could be solved by placing the teacher at the highest point on site, where he or she would have full view into all these areas. Another concern was the height of the trees and the branches, and we've selected yellowwood tree, which is a very tall, straight, vertical branch, central leader branch, and can be trimmed and maintained over time so that you get a really clear see-through underneath. So the branches wouldn't be obstructing the views also. So that could be as simple as where that teacher, that monitor, sits or stands during recess time. Another option would be to add fencing scope, again that's another cost, to the top side of the berm. So again, all the students would be inbound of wherever that fence was. Do you guys have any comments or thoughts?
There's no fence now.
No, because they play on the big field now too. If they play soccer or football or things like that, they go out on the back onto the big field. So, and I think a lot of this could be changing when we come to the new school, because there most likely would be 2 lunches together and 2 recesses together to accommodate all of the grades together. So you'll have the combination of the 2 buildings, which would mean that there'd be another person out there, so there'd be the potential to have
Okay.
somebody up above and down below, and those
Okay.
kids would be spread out. And so I think a lot of that would just be
Will be
taken care of as we move forward.
Okay.
Because I don't see how we would do 7 lunches separate, They'd start eating at 8:30. So I think that's just a consideration, and we can make it work.
Okay.
We can put a bench at the top.
Yeah.
No, sir.
An
We
uncomfortable
could give them
bench.
roller skates.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
If fencing seems unnecessary because it's the older kids, and fencing usually becomes unsightly. You can't weed whack that crap.
And it becomes another play toy.
Yeah, and they climb on it, and
Yeah.
it's just a nuisance. Plus, there's no street there to
Yeah.
worry about.
And then the other consideration was, do we provide a separate area for pre-K through pre-K through first? Or do we allow this whole area, it is fenced in, yeah, the whole area is fenced in, or do we allow the whole area to be used by all students, depending on how recess is managed?
How would you break out that other area in that design?
Looked at a bunch of options in the office after we heard that comment, and it seemed like if this area got smaller, we lost some of the opportunities for that maximizing the maze and the different types of experiences. And so it seemed like if we introduced a fence from this corner of the building to this corner of the building and a gate, that this zone could be pre-K, pre-K, And then we could place another swing set for pre-K and K here, and then congregate a slide, and maybe one other or two other features in this area, also system.
Is there nothing you could add to the playground to make it usable for pre-K and K?
It currently is. This is currently to accommodate that whole range. Concern that we heard from the teacher was that she just wanted to be able to, if there were older kids, like if there was a second grader out on the playground, and it was a pre-K student who, maybe hadn't quite socialized well with older kids, or the older kid didn't socialize well with the younger kids, that there could be some management issue on that server's part, making sure everybody is safe.
That's the way West Street School is now. The playground now is as a separate, smaller fenced-in yard for the pre-K. So I see teachers kind of probably like that, and they want to see that in the next year. But they're two separate pre-Ks.
And I think it just leads to pre-K's outside a little bit more, because it's built into their movements and into a lot of the structured play and things like that. And having the ability to have a separate area where they can then do that within the confines of that area and not have to worry about them going throughout the whole area. And just, not having to limit, I think, the first graders or second graders that are out there running hard or playing harder because the little ones are there too, so that we don't want to have to say to them, you can't play as hard today because, we have the preschoolers out here with you. We want to try to keep it as even as possible. So it does make some sense, in the way they described it and what they were talking about and the developmental needs. And I think it just comes down to the budget and, where we go from there. And I know PTO was talking about, like what the next steps would be as far as equipment and things like that, and helping to subsidize some of that in the end, or doing some sort of I know it's premature to talk about it, but some sort of a playground fundraiser or something maybe to help with some of that. So, I think there too, what's next?
So maybe the fencing goes in our project costs, but we don't spend extra money on equipment for now.
Maybe just the fencing and a swing set, a smaller swing set or something like that. And
To start with.
Yeah, so to start with, or and depending when they could get, I think they're just looking for the green light or the go-ahead as to when they could start going ahead with some sort of fundraiser after the, everything was done on this.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Isn't the equipment at West Street relatively new though? Can't we move it over?
But our plans call for moving 2 swing sets from West Street to this location. We could, I don't know what you think about maybe taking one of those and putting them in the pre-K area with pre-K appropriate swings, and then the fundraising could be for one of the second through, first through second.
Yeah, PTO wants to fundraise and contribute and waiting for the green light. I remember we talked about it before, something about how we can't do it until the project is funded, so there won't be a conflict and whatnot. But for sure, that would be a perfect thing for PTO to fundraise for. Is the equipment.
So are they good to go?
No.
Not yet?
No.
No, not anywhere near, we gotta wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably looked at like a grant would be, in which
Yeah,
case
yeah.
the state shares its percentage of grants.
They'll take back the money,
They'll
whatever.
take back 60% or whatever.
Until it
So
really
you don't
is
want to fundraise until after you're finished.
yeah,
right?
closed out, basically.
Yeah.
You can start fundraising, you just don't want to.
You can't
pull the
turn it
trigger.
over to anybody, right?
Pull the trigger on it.
You've been planning and else.
So what we can do is show on the plans the area designated, and as we talked about, maybe moving one of the swings over and adding a fence to the project, and just showing on the plans for future play equipment.
Okay. Would we also hold off on the fall fencing because that makes sense to tie in with the equipment. Right?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, because otherwise you're spending a lot of money on wood mulch. You have to maintain it.
I think you plan for what ideally will fit there, what's appropriate for that size space, how much hard space, how much fall space, and then scale back from there, what's going to be included in the original plan. That way, you have a master plan going forward that they can then fundraise to fill.
Yeah, just one more option, one more item to cover. The lead credits. And Christian and Helen can talk to this more, but we're really close to where we need to be, which also means we don't have a lot of buffer. And one of the possible innovation credits is to provide an opportunity for a gardening program with the students. And we were looking at the plans and where that might work for all age groups. And this corner of the building is out of the way of a lot of the play activities. It's out of the way of a lot of the operations of the school. And it has a good south orientation that's open, so things will go well. And they're looking at their raised or in-grade planting areas. And then optional too, but I guess again it comes down to budget, is are we providing water out there? Are we providing any sort of potting shed or storage shed for rakes and pots and soil, and maybe even a compost area so that they can.
Is this a full credit? Is it 1% credit?
Yeah, so is the weed stuff next, Christian? Maybe we can
Yes.
why don't we
Yeah.
jump into that, and we can toggle back to that plan, because we had asked Rachel to take a look at that. So, as Rachel already spilled the beans, so we are right now, we're on target for silver, which is what we've talked about since the start of the project. It enables us for additional reimbursement. So we are going to make silver, no matter what. But right now, we are just at silver. Silver is 50 points. So the way we kind of track this, the green columns are credits we're pretty darn sure we're going to get. The yellow is maybe. We've got a ton of credits in yellow. And then there's another category of pilot credits. You can apply to the U.S. Green Building Council and say, hey, we've got this great idea. We think it's worth a credit. We are working with a lead consultant on this project. She's had some success with some of these things. So again, we're definitely keeping our maybes. We'd like to see more of our maybes move into the yes category. So with that said, it sent Cheryl.
Helen,
Yeah.
can you just give me an example of what the maybes are?
Sure. Let's see.
Yeah, I can't read it from here either.
Yeah.
So a lot of the maybes are just doing further calculations, right? So I can see
Yeah.
one on here is indoor water use reduction. So we're planning on some, we have some waterless urinals, we have low flow fixtures, but we really aren't going to know until we bang out the final calculations.
Okay.
Another one that has the most credits in general is optimized energy performance. And that's a very detailed energy model that takes a very, very, very long time to complete. So our mechanical engineer has been working on that from day one, and they're getting there. And so they feel pretty comfortable that they're going to get 8. 6 in the maybe that's a little bit generous. And then certainly we're not going to get all 16 points.
Okay.
So that's
Thank you.
So next month, we do plan on submitting our first round of credits to USGBC. They're the design credits that are most in our control. There are credits that are in the contractor's control that have to be tracked through the construction process. And then there are some credits that we kind of need a little more buy-in from the town and the district on to pursue. So if we go to the next one, I gave you a little bit of heads up, Cheryl, last week. I sent Cheryl a memo kind of describing some of these. Some of these are no-brainers, but they just require some documentation. Like joint use of facilities is something we have assumed is a green. You're gonna do it. You're gonna allow the community to use the building. And so basically you just have to show USGBC that you have a policy for this. And so we will need a policy, and I'm assuming that's the school committee that would, maybe one exists already, I don't know. But
Yeah, because we have procedures for facilities use
Okay.
requests.
So we'll have to put that all together with a diagram of the building showing which areas people have access to. So that one I'm assuming is no problem. Green vehicles is one that may be achievable, so this is getting into the details a little bit, but essentially it's USGBC is saying that if all of your buses meet certain emissions requirements within 7 years of occupancy, I know we did talk about this months ago, there was some renegotiating with the bus company, but the emissions requirements are pretty much standard requirements. It's all new vehicles within the next few years are going to meet these. The trickier one is they're asking that the town, and this is really the town, develop and implement a plan for 100% of non-bus vehicles owned or leased to serve the school with green vehicles. And again, they give you certain criteria that it would have to meet from a green scoring standpoint. So I don't know, how you categorize, because the town is really responsible for maintenance of the school, which vehicles are tied to the school. If there's a vehicle purchasing policy the town has in terms of emissions or a green kind of.
To be a green community, we had to pass criteria that we would be low emission vehictions.
Okay.
However, there were exceptions to it, which is mainly the highway vehicles and I believe the police cruisers
Okay.
were exceptions to that.
Okay.
But we do have a criteria that we did pass
Great.
to become a green community,
Okay.
okay, under DOER.
Okay. Is that's written somewhere that
Yeah.
you could point me to? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a look at that, and maybe you're already on the way with this one.
We probably have to check then that the same kind of exemptions that apply to green community would apply to this.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that comparison. Okay, great. Environmental tobacco smoke control, I'm assuming there's no smoking on the property. We just need to prove it.
We could still dip, right?
No, don't, la, 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 no. We just need to show that you have a policy. So we need documentation from you. Local food production is the one that Rachel just touched on. This one is kind of interesting, and I think this one is about having a champion in the school. Someone who's interested in helping kids grow stuff. You don't have to eat it. It's producing the food on the site.
Marijuana plants, how's that?
Connection here with question 4.
As long as you don't
There goes our
smoke.
8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's right.
There goes 8 o'clock.
So this is something to think about. It's a very, from a land standpoint, you've got plenty of land. It's a half a square foot per student, so we're really looking at 200, 250 square feet designated for growing things. And the idea is that there'd be some programming around that. So whether it's eating the food, prepping the food or not, cutting the fruits or squash open and counting the seeds, using measuring to, plant things. Someone needs to embrace that and own that, and so that's,
I think that's doable.
yeah.
It's doable through the science curriculum, but also through the wellness committee, so,
Okay.
because I know there's an interest already.
How much land was being set aside for the garden?
For lead, it's only 250 square feet. Could be bigger, as big as you want. But, again, if we decide to pursue this credit, I think, at least for us to know, the documents that go in are going to have a little area saying, for food production. Whether or not you plant it, and whether or not we go for the credit, I think we can, continue to work on. But if we all think that that's something that's worthwhile, I think we should show it on the drawings. And maybe not plan on raised beds, although for accessibility, that is nicer. But that would be a fundraiser too, for the PTO. So, keep going forward with that one?
Yeah.
Great. And the next one, you are already well on your way with. There is the ability to get a credit for being enrolled in Mass DEP's drinking water program, and then you just have to produce a test. So they need evidence of that you're enrolled and then that you've done testing. It seems like you do that already. So again, these are just things we need, buy-in from you all, and we're going to find out for the documentation.
Okay. It's a long weekend.
Yeah, not Tuesday, it's okay, but, all right, great.
Great. Phasing, so there are some questions on phasing, and so I just wanted to go over this, and we've also plugged in some specific dates, because we're gonna have to hold the contractor to specific dates. There's a bar chart, there might be some extras there in the middle, that's also floating around to kind of simplify this. So we've seen a lot of this before, but phase one, again, is February. So we're saying February 10th, 2017. That's been the date that's always been on Collier's timetable for the groundbreaking, so to speak. Till June 23rd, which I think was the last day of school. Did we figure it out? It's the last day of school, and then I think we gave you a couple days buffer.
Couple days after.
So that's phase one, when kids are in school, they own the south of it. Again, they're taking out the greenhouse first. They're putting in these gravel drives that are shown in gray. You have bus drop-off on the right, and parent drop-off will have to come in through the high school driveway on the left. So that's February 10th to June 23rd. June 26th to August 18th, they get to own the entire site. This is a summer slammer where they're really working on all the site work and the cafeteria in particular, and continuing to progress on the addition, but probably focusing their energies on the cafeteria and the site. August 21st to February 14th, they're finishing up the addition. So we arrived at February 14th because it is a couple days before, the week before President's Day weekend, which is your February break typically. So gives us a couple days leeway, but it still is going to require the move to happen over that next week. So a pretty short moving time. So that's February 26th, so that's 14 days. They start in phase 4 on February 26th, and then again do that till the end of the school year on June 20th. We're saying for phase 4?
We don't
or
have
so.
schedule yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And then phase 5, which isn't really shown here because it's just them finishing phase 4 and doing any other final cleanup throughout the entire site, is June 21st through August 17th, which again matches up with the timeline that we've had for the overall project all along. It is confusing, and teachers are moving from one building to the new building and then back to the old building again after it's been renovated, but we're hopeful that this kind of helps explain that a little bit, showing the February break move over for 2 weeks in mid to late February 2018, and then completion in late August of 2018.
Is this definite, or is this pretty much solid?
This will
That
be
you're
the-
gonna hold the contractors?
We're holding the contractors to this.
Right.
No, and can we share this information with the community, because
Yep, that's
it's
what
like
it's
number
public
one
right now.
question. Everyone says, when is it starting? When's gonna be, when are we gonna move?
Yeah, I'm getting inundated with those questions.
Yeah,
That's why I
so-
asked, just to have something that,
I think it's really clear. I think it's a good meeting.
It's clear if all the bids are clear.
And we don't have
We
protests.
don't
and we
have
don't have-
protests, we don't
Yes.
have labor disputes.
Yep.
You can give generalities, but you certainly can't give them a date, because you're gonna regret it.
Yep.
I asked this question before, and it's probably premature, but at what point are we gonna talk liquidated damages in regards to this schedule?
In each phase, it'll be set up as liquidated damages, and then the final end date will be another liquidated damage clause.
Are we as a committee going to set that number, or are we gonna be told?
We can.
can you explain that? Can somebody explain what we're?
Well, you set up an end date for each one of the phases for the contractor to meet, and if he misses that date, he is being assessed liquidated damages, a penalty per day that he misses that until he completes that phase. And So then each phase has, you can set up the criteria for each phase for what that liquidated damage will be for each phase, and then you can have a job total liquidated damages for not meeting your end date. It's usually a higher amount at the end date, and it's a lesser amount for each one of the phases.
But we may want to make it a higher amount for the cafeteria work.
Well, I'm concerned the cafeteria has to be done in the summer. We don't have any place else to feed these kids. I mean, the definition of liquidated damage is what it costs the city or the town, so that we don't have that space. What it would cost us to feed these kids in a different location. That's the definition of it.
Yeah.
So we would need to know that. If we don't have a cafeteria, what are we gonna do with them? Send them all to McDonald's? We need to know that answer. We need to put a number next to it. And I think it applies to some of these other ones. Certainly the move date, if they're not ready for us to move that school vacation, we don't have another week. So I think that the liquidated damages in these two cases is very critical. And I think the number should be substantial.
I agree.
So what does that do to the bidding and contracting process? Does it become a deterrent and people don't really want to be part of it? Or is this a normal process?
They'll build it into their
Okay.
price.
They'll plan overtime to make sure they hit the date. That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It should be a deterrent anyway, but I just wanted to know whether or not it changes the landscape a little
They
bit.
probably will with it because they'll build in extra overtime to make sure they can hit that date.
Okay, makes sense.
So I think one of the biggest questions we have is, it's hard for us to determine what it costs to feed the students if, in fact, we don't have that cafeteria done.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be an arbitrary number. I don't think we have to be exact. I mean, I'm thinking that the number should be somewhere in the area of $5,000 to $10,000 a day.
That's a big number from what we've seen, but.
Well, would it make sense to calculate because they do serve bag lunches, and then we would distribute out of the high school cafeteria, which
It's
we do
difficult
want to
getting
be.
the unknown numbers.
Yeah, so if we
can't-
knew what the price of the lunches were, and, I think that
you-
would be a place to start.
I just think we have to pick a number that we feel comfortable with. This is just my preference, because I've been doing other work at UMass, and $5,000 is a number we start with. But it wouldn't be uncommon to make this $2,000 a day. It's just something we all feel comfortable with. The larger the number is, it says it could affect the bid, so maybe it is $2,000 a day. But if there isn't something there that says the contractor nailing his feet to the floor, he's not gonna nail his feet to the floor. So there has to be some number. Whatever that number is, I rely on these people who've done schools more than I have to come back and give us an appropriate number.
But we also have to make sure that there is no large change orders occurring during that time period too.
That is correct.
We have to be very cognizant of those factors, because that could possibly make him have to add on to his end date for construction.
That is correct. There's a lot of factors involved in this, but if we don't have something, we don't have anything.
So is there has it been considered a fallback position of what do you do, where do you feed the kids if the cafeteria is not ready?
No,
Has that been discussed at all?
There is,
No.
there is
Doesn't
none. There is
I
none.
would assume they make the lunches
No.
next door at high school, and the kids would
Okay.
have to have lunch in
Yeah.
the classroom.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what we have done in other buildings is just that, a box lunch, whether they eat if they're working on the kitchen, but the cafeteria is ready and they could use the cafeteria. We've done that where you put it up a partition and they eat there, but the kitchen is offline. Really, there's a lot in the kitchen. which-
There is no alternative. That alternative is not acceptable to us. This is acceptable to us.
The bottom line is, if you get the money, you don't want the money, you want the cafeteria.
That is correct.
But what we need to understand is what options do you have? I mean, you can put a dollar value, but if they don't hit it, what are you gonna do? We need to know that going in.
We'll be prepared if they don't hit it, and we'll make the
Well, that's what we're
financial
talking
decision.
about. What are you gonna
This
do?
committee will make the financial decisions which are necessary, but as far as we're concerned, there is no options.
We can come up with a dollar value, is what I'm saying. But what I'm also saying is, you need to have a plan. So, as a committee, you're saying you're gonna come up with something, great.
Yep.
But you really need to have a plan going in. We can put a hammer, say, look, we're gonna hammer you $5,000, $10,000, $2,000 a day. But you have to have a plan of going in, and it sounds like the cafeteria at the high school can supply box lunches.
Yep.
And then you just have to come up with, okay, how are they gonna be distributed?
Yeah.
Where are they gonna go? Where do we have capacity to put additional refrigeration, that we can distribute milk and other things? Do we have power? You know, can we rent those? All those types
The
of.
school is prepared to do that, but the school is not prepared to change the school vacation if they don't meet that date.
Well, we haven't gotten to that yet. Let's focus on
Well,
on
they're just as
the
important, either one of
cafeteria.
them is just as important.
In terms of what they're doing in the cafeteria, do you think 8 weeks will do it? I mean, you guys who do this, you know what they're doing in there. I know they're not taking it apart from, top to bottom. They're not, I know they're adding the footprint and so on, not touching the stage, but what else? They're not changing, are you changing the ceiling and all that stuff and lights?
Yeah.
But most of the work's gonna be in the kitchen itself, right? But you're not changing the size of the kitchen.
Not the size of it, but we're tearing up that whole slab.
But do you think 8 weeks is gonna, I mean, the people who estimate this, do you think that's gonna be a doable thing?
If the weather cooperates.
Yeah, just continue, and, I mean. Why wouldn't in the summer? Why wouldn't summer?
Rainstorms. If they're tearing up the whole slab, there's gonna be issues.
Can we go back to one?
It's a lot of work to do in an 8-week summer. If you don't get out till the end of June, and then you need a few days for the teachers to clear out of the building before you can really get in there with equipment. It's a lot to try and do and have everything up and running, the health department come in and bless everything in that time frame.
So a quick question. The 23rd, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, is with all the snow days and everything. If we get lucky and we don't get so many snow days, it may end much sooner, like we may save 10 days. Last year it was what, the 14th, 17th, something like that when we got out. Will these folks be ready to move in if we are able to get out and go on vacation sooner? Or is this basically, I'm gonna start on that date, even if you vacate, I can't do anything situation?
They'll start.
They will start?
I think if they're going in with the worst case that you don't get out to the 23rd, and they're gonna plan that you have to be done by August 15th, worst case the 21st, they'll plan to work double shifts, and they'll have to specify that you have to get it done. They'll plan on that. And if they can start earlier and not do as many double shifts, it'll cost them less, and they'll definitely do it.
Okay.
You know,
Good.
It might be the year to start school a bit later too, this September, that year.
It's the beginning of the year, so if they were to go over, could we require them to bring in picnic tables and the kids can eat outside?
There's a lot of things to
I
do,
mean-
but I think we're reading too much into this until we know. It's, the time here, these professionals have come up with this time, which I think is appropriate. And I think that we're acknowledging that we have an option to take care of feeding the children. And I don't think we have to do any more than that right at the moment. We have the ability to do it if it's necessary, and we will do it. And that's all we need to know at the moment. We give too much of these conversations, they're gonna get out to the contractors, and they're gonna say, oh, they're gonna feed them in the cafeteria, I don't care if I give you back $15,000. We have to keep in line of what we're trying to do. And we acknowledge, we have a method to do it, and that's all they need to know. Otherwise, we're just digging a hole deeper than we're gonna get out of.
So we're done with that topic?
I just want to say that Patsy's from Little Italy, they'll deliver.
Well, I know other towns have done
I
it.
guarantee you it won't be
They
$2,000.
bought pizza or things, but we have Chartwells, so I think,
Yes.
we have the capability to have that delivered over, So, one question, and I know we said, I don't know if we can talk about, so that February date. What will that look like? I mean, do we know yet, or is that something so is it 2 days to move everything, and then the teachers would have 3 days to set up their classrooms, or because I think we have to look at what the reality of that is too, and there might have to be some agreement with the teachers that they're gonna have to be there for those days during that February break to set up those classrooms.
Contractually, what are they?
They're not contractually obligated to be there at all. That's what I'm saying. There might be we might have to look at some PD days and trading off a couple PD days or trading off something else for those days or something in there. And I'm not saying we would, but if the union wanted to play to the contract, they could say, you know, that we would do that or something to that effect. And I think we should be ready for what that might look like. And then the other piece of that is if the school's not ready at that point, the only other option then would be April break. And what would that do to the whole project? Because now we're talking 2 months later on that end of it. So that goes to the point too of making sure that they stick to that deadline.
And so to his point, what does that week look like? And if we can't require, then the school committee having the discussion about how we build the next year's school calendar, that perhaps there's a day, that Monday that we would normally return with students, we return only with staff. And that gives them the day to set up their new classroom. Because it is a lot to ask a professional. They would be setting up their classroom twice, once in August and then moving. And then, so if we knew for sure they would meet that date, we would set the calendar so that we had that free day for staff to work, but, you know, to organize for learning.
Regardless of what it is, it needs to be.
Wherever that goes.
Right.
So if that slides at all, we just build it into the discussion that there'll be a day, once the move is complete, that the day after that move, and then we can communicate that to parents and family, that, you know, there will be sort of a day that may.
That you also may want to consider that on the front end too, the packing of all of these rooms.
Right.
Because the younger kids, the teachers, they have a lot more manipulatives and
Yeah.
classroom
Yeah.
libraries. There's just a lot more than the older kids. So giving them time to pack, I mean, you have the Christmas break, where we can encourage purging of, you know, teachers who have been there a while.
They know
tend to
that,
build up.
they've been doing that now, so
Right,
actually
purging things
Jen
away.
had already started that process with them, start to do that now.
But even
So
after the
I-
purge, there's a lot of stuff.
So the hard
These are fourth,
packing,
fifth, and sixth grade, though.
Right.
Fourth, fifth, and sixth grade are moving
Okay.
from one building into the other.
He'll do a little better than the little kids.
that's true. So to your point about what does that week look like, I mean, are the teachers given that first day? It sounds like they're gonna be busy, the teachers are gonna be engaged most of that week. No, I mean, the actual moving will be done by professionals.
Mhm.
Packing is going to have to be organized by the teachers. So is that the first couple of days of February break, the move happens?
Ideally, it's done before February break, and then that way you move everything, and
It just
then
happens on break.
that last 3 days of that break, they could be setting up, putting things on the bulletin board and that sort of stuff. Ideally, if there is a professional development day that you can give to them to kind of get some of their other materials that they've already completed, those programs or those units that packed up, that works well. And then if, what we've done is we designate an area of the classroom where, all right, you put all your boxes in this back corner.
Labeled and-
You know, usually there isn't enough storage room somewhere to be able to put them. But as we get closer to February, if as soon as we can move, we'll get the movers out there to move things. I mean, if some of those classrooms are maybe not occupiable, but they're ready to go, and they're just finishing testing the fire alarm system or something like that, and we can get movers in to get things out of the classrooms and get it over as soon as we can, we will do that.
But regardless of what the situation is, whether it's just contingency plan or matter of fact, we're gonna have to have teachers in certain places at certain dates, we have to know in advance so that we can have that conversation. We can't just, a couple of weeks before that, we can't say, oh, sorry, we just found out that you can't do that. It's not gonna be possible.
No.
We would know going
Yeah.
in. We'll be having weekly job meetings, we'll understand what the building official, the fire marshals, have they been through yet, that we have the life safety sign off. That, usually there's always something that's last minute, but we'll have a pretty good sense going in whether we're gonna be able to hit that. And if not, like Jim says, we'll come up with plans, and we won't have them developed now, but we'll know as we get closer.
That's good.
So that Friday might actually be another day where we would look at a
Half
flex
day.
scheduling or make it a half day so they could pack or something like that, finalize that. And then-
So it'll take a lot of members of the community, there's a chance for community volunteers to
Yes.
come in, other organizations to come in and help out.
Well, and if it's a half day district-wide, we could have all the staff over there helping, pick a buddy teacher and help pack that up, so that it would be a district-wide effort too.
I would assume the desk that, if I'm in the fourth grade, the desk that I'm sitting at is probably going into this renovated building, right? They're not going into furniture.
No, we're holding off to the end on the new furniture.
Kids are just moving their desks, desks are moved in, sit back up under them. Kids don't have to do much except what they have in their desks. Your teachers, if they start purging things, then it shouldn't be too much, really. But that's me talking, I'm not a teacher. Right now.
Well, no, and I think the age level, they'll know with their unit plans and what they're gonna need, and they can certainly start packing a lot of that, the stuff that they're not gonna be using.
They know this is gonna happen, right?
Right.
They know this is gonna happen. It's not gonna happen by snapping your fingers, it's not gonna, you push your nose and all of a sudden the stuff's out of your room and you're good one. And plus they're gonna be there for, quite a while, right? You're gonna be there for that few months and all next year, so. Bulletin boards and that kind of stuff is probably not the most important thing.
So just to get back to this phasing, so really, what we're talking about is really 3 liquidated damage dates. So it's really the end of the summer of 17, because phase 1 really continues all the way through February or
That's
into
true.
February 14th.
Yes.
So your really first liquidated damage date that you're really concerned about is August 21st. The next one that you're concerned about is February 14th.
Correct.
That's the move. And then the next one is August 17th of 2018. So the way this lays out, it makes it look like there's 5 independent, there's 5 transitions, if you will, but really 3 critical dates that you want to be concerned about for liquidated damage.
That's correct.
Right.
Do we want to try and arrive at a number tonight?
No,
No.
no.
Great.
I would say though, if you can get a cost for lunch, that would be very helpful. I mean, your liquidated damage, even though you're kind of picking a number, it has to be based in reality, on something, some sort of logical reasoning that you come up with. Otherwise, it gets challenged and you'll never achieve it, never seize it. Granted, you don't want it, but you need some sort of hammer.
Another happy topic, hazardous materials. So we met with our hazmat consultant the other week, and they've been looking at the plan on this final push. They've said a few other concerns. We've already done a lot of testing in the building. We pulled back those tack surfaces in the corridors, and I was wondering, I saw some glue back there, and they had already tested it, and it was fine, so that was great. Found out that that was the case. We looked at the drawings a little bit further, the existing drawings. There is a vapor barrier that's indicated under the slab, and our hazardous materials consultant has said that they ran into that being asbestos containing before. Perhaps it's just plastic, but perhaps not. And the reason why he's flagging it, which goes into our discussion on phasing, is that when we're pulling up all of that slab in the kitchen, if they suddenly hit an asbestos containing vapor barrier under the slab, that could back that up. So we're recommending some testing done before construction starts, drilling some cores in the slab and testing that material. So we're getting a proposal for that. There are some drain pipes that are exiting the building, in particular drain pipes that are leading from the roof drains, from the roof leaders. He felt that it was better in that case to just assume that it's transite pipe, which has a small amount of asbestos in it. It's not worth the cost to really do an exploratory session now. We'll include a unit price in the specifications so that if there's more transit pipe than we thought, then we'll hold them to a specific unit price. And if there's less transit than we thought, then we'll get a deduct change order according to that unit cost. And then the other big one is that the greenhouse has not been tested, the site demo plans ATC was involved in the high school project, so they'd done quite a bit of testing on that previous go-around, but they did not test the greenhouse on that previous project, and we haven't tested it on this project yet either. So that's another area where they're recommending some future testing before we move forward. So those are some proposals that.
The floor tile is metal?
That's already been tested,
That's
and
been
it's,
tested, right?
it's hot, correct. So that we're already planning on, we've got a specification on how to take that out of there. We have,
Cafeteria is, that was replaced. That's not asbestos, is it?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
That was the only pile replaced, was the cafeteria in front hall.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get this all tested prior to bid, these 3 items?
The greenhouse and the slab, we probably are. The transit pipe, we probably will not.
I think it's worthwhile. We need to know as much as we can.
Because if we don't have those, then it's gonna come back, if that turns out to be the case, and that's gonna cause problems during, and it may cause delays, and it looks like we're playing with a tight schedule.
For the piping coming out of the building, we were just gonna assume that it's hazardous. And then if it ends up not being hazardous, then we would get a deduct change order, but we would just assume that it is for now. The problem with testing it, which we ran into actually in South Hadley, is we did test for the piping and it wasn't, but then 10 feet down the line, it was. And that was the part that we unearthed, of course. So, in this case, I think on that one, it does make sense to just kind of assume that it is and proceed from there.
Is it the same thing with slab and the greenhouse?
The slab, I think we should test for sure, and the greenhouse, I think we should test before we go out to bid.
But do we do just point testing, and then there's a possibility that we may find something elsewhere? I mean, greenhouse is not that big, but,
Right.
you know, slab especially.
Right, well, because, I mean, it's one vapor barrier that's shown under the whole building, so
Right.
hopefully that all went in at one time, and hopefully that's all the same material.
Okay.
So we're thinking about doing a couple tests, but I think if those both come back positive, then we're pretty sure that the whole thing is positive, or vice versa.
We're not removing a lot of slab in the existing building, only really in toilet room areas, and the kitchen is the big one, and the kitchen
Right.
is the one that's tied to a tight date, not that everything isn't. So that's the one that really we feel should be
Yeah.
investigated.
And my concern is that because we just talked about the tight timeline around it, something happens, we have a dispute, and by the time we even have a conversation, the break is done, and we don't get to do anything, everything is gonna fall apart. It would be good to know beforehand what the probability of finding any asbestos in there would be.
Certainly.
Yeah.
More schedule stuff going forward, and I'm maybe going to take care of this, but FF&E.
Yeah, so
timeframe?
just to make you aware, on 2 fronts. One is that these are slightly separate design efforts that we're going to be undertaking in the next months. They don't have to go now along with the building. However, FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, we're planning on starting in November. So right around the time we're putting this project out to bid, we're going to start having some meetings with some group. So that's something we want you to start thinking about. Who do you want representing the district and maybe this committee in terms of furniture selection? We've done a lot with materials. Chris told me last time, don't show me any more colors. Materials are pretty well set, as well as color scheme in terms of building materials. But now we're on to furniture finishes, colors, etc. So think about who would be useful to have involved in that. You can do it as a big group, you can do it as a committee is more effective, but I think it is helpful to have, some teachers who are going to be using the furniture on a daily basis involved. So that'll start in November. We are doing 2 furniture deliveries. Only the first phase is really only for the cafeteria. We all felt it was important to have new furniture in that new space. It'll be the perfect time in the project to have like a finished space with finished furniture in it. So we will have one delivery that will occur for the cafeteria furniture, The rest of the furniture will come at the very end of the project. So as we've already discussed, East Meadow students will move their desks, teachers will move their stuff over for the short term, and then at the end of the project, all of the rest of the furniture will arrive. So there'll be two sort of bid and procurement phases, one small, one large.
Question on the bidding and stuff.
Mhm.
Are we gonna be looking at state contracts and
Yes.
school consortium contracts?
Yep.
That could cut that 2-month period down dramatically.
Yep, absolutely, we will. We'll be looking at bidding versus procuring. We did a combination of that on South Hadley, it worked
Okay.
out really well.
All right.
And then for technology, similarly, this will start even a bit later, next spring, assuming we'll have David involved in that. But again, you might want a core group of people involved with reviewing technology equipment. So the infrastructure is already plugged into the building plans. So this is all the loose stuff that, and then again, with technology, you want to wait as late as you can because it keeps changing. So we'll want a small group to work on that starting in spring.
This one will get installed in 2 packages. So the addition will have interactive projectors, probably new laptops for the teachers, things of that nature, in addition when they move into it. And then we'll have the second installation in the renovated part at the end of the project.
Thank you.
Play ball.
We want to talk about pre-qualification?
Yeah.
We had one more item.
Just to give an update on the pre-qualification, we have a list, I don't know if everybody got the list of contractors who has submitted a request for, or submitted their qualification package. So we've divided these up amongst the pre-qualification committee, and we'll start the review process. We're anticipating that around the end of October, we will have completed the review, and we'll get back together and compare notes and make sure we're all on the same page. And then at that point, we would send out letters to all the firms letting them know that, yes, they've been pre-qualified, or unfortunately, no, they haven't been pre-qualified. The sooner we can get this done and get that, let them know, the better. But if we hit it by the end of October, we should be okay. If we run into some issues and it takes a little bit longer, we're still okay. We're not going out to bid, in early November, so we should be all set. But we got a good turnout. There were a couple trades that we were pretty light on. Acoustical ceiling tile, the top one on the first page, we only got 2. So we did put an ad out for soliciting additional submissions, and those are due next Wednesday. So it was acoustical tile, fire protection, and then the general contractors. We wanted to make sure we had a good list. So
5 is a good number to...
Yeah, but we would like to get as many as we could. So if we're going to be putting a extension out and putting an ad in, and we figured we could include the GCs just to make sure that we get as many as we can. And we'll go through the vetting process of the ones that we have, but if we get some more in on the 12th, then we'll add those to the list.
Does this include any qualified local businesses too? Did you look at that?
This is for filed subbidders. So basically any contractor that has, that is one of the filed sub-trades and that's over a certain minimum dollar value. So the GC will have a lot of other trades that are not necessarily filed sub-trades that could conceivably be local. And some of these guys are local, but we'll go through and check their qualifications.
I'm asking because I was asked the question whether local businesses will qualify for some of these.
Well, if they've submitted, they would be allowed, and they're pre-qualified, they'd be allowed to bid. If they did not submit, then they will not be allowed to bid if they're one of these filed sub-trades. But again, if they're not a filed sub-trade they would be able to provide their number to the general contractor, and he could
Yep.
include it in their bid.
Makes
And that would
sense.
really be up to him whether he chose to include them or not.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, motion adjourned.
Next meeting.
First meeting. All right, there's a thought.
We have scheduled the 17th of November. Is the next meeting.
17th of November?
Yeah. Yes. Which puts us just before we're distributing bid documents, which is scheduled for November 21st.
6:30 again?
Yep. Maybe September.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Always a good time.